Okay, let's start with a mental image. A place that is, frankly, a little terrifying. I want you to picture yourself on the banks of the Hudson River. You're surrounded by these imposing gray stone buildings, gray uniforms, probably a gray sky. This is the United States Military Academy at West Point.
The pinnacle.
Exactly. And we're not just looking at the campus, we're looking at the admissions process, which is, it's probably one of the most rigorous filters in the entire American university system.
Oh, it's the filter to end all filters. It's not just about good grades. To even get your application looked at, you need, near perfect scores. You need to have been a varsity captain. You need to be in peak physical condition. And then on top of all that, you literally need a nomination from a sitting member of Congress, a senator.
So we are not talking about the smart kids. We're talking about the valedictorians who also happen to run marathons and lead the student government.
These are the best of the best, the elite of the elite, the naturals, as some might call them.
So you have this pool of just intimidatingly talented young people. They arrive, they're ready to conquer the world, and almost immediately they run face first into something called the Beast.
Beast Barracks. It sounds like something from a horror movie, and for the cadets, it probably feels like it.
What is it exactly?
It's the 7-week, incredibly intensive training program that happens the summer before freshman or plebe year even starts. It's engineered, quite literally, to break you down.
Break you down how?
We're talking 17-hour days. It's a relentless barrage of physical, mental, and emotional stress. You're screaming, you're running, you're trying to learn complex military protocol while you're completely sleep deprived.
It's a pressure cooker.
The ultimate pressure cooker. And here's the mystery that really kicks off our entire deep dive today. 1 in 5 cadets drops out of West Point. A huge number of them quit during Beast.
That seems like a problem. And the Army, being the Army, loves data.
Right.
They'd want to solve this.
Oh, absolutely. For decades, they've been trying to quantify who survives the Beast. They developed this thing called the whole candidate score.
Their golden algorithm.
That's what they thought. It was a weighted average of everything you could possibly measure on paper. SAT scores, your high school rank, a brutal physical test called the Candidate Fitness Assessment.
And leadership potential, whatever that means.
Right, a leadership potential score from your extracurriculars. And this score was the single most important factor for getting in. The Army's core belief was, if you have a high whole candidate score, you are WESP material.
Seems logical. You take the smartest, strongest, most accomplished kids, put them through a formula, and that formula should predict who is going to succeed when things get tough.
It should, but it didn't.
What do you mean?
When Angela Duckworth, the psychologist whose work we're digging into today, got a look at their data, she found something that was frankly terrifying to the admissions officers.
Which was?
The whole candidate score, their prized metric. It had absolutely zero reliable correlation with who survived Beast Barracks.
Wait, zero. Not a little bit, but a zero.
Effectively zero. The cadets with the highest scores, the ones who looked perfect on paper, the superstars, they were just as likely to pack their bags, ring that bell, and quit as the cadets who barely scraped by to get in. The algorithm was completely blind.
That's a massive failure.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of dollars in training, decades of data collection, and the best system the U.S. military could design couldn't tell you who would quit when the going got tough.
Which tells you something profound. It suggests that talent, at least in the traditional way we measure it, IQ, physical stats, past accomplishments, that's not the variable that matters most when you're in the trenches.
There's an invisible variable.
There is an invisible variable that matters more than talent. And that's what Duckworth calls grit. And that brings us to the whole focus of today's deep dive.
We're unpacking grit, the power of passion and perseverance. And we are, I think, going to try and debunk this cultural obsession we have with genius.
Yeah, this idea of the natural. We're going to explore why that obsession is scientifically wrong and how we can actually, manufacture this quality of grit in ourselves and in others.
And I want to be really clear up front. We aren't just talking about trying hard. I feel like grit has become this buzzword you see on coffee mugs.
It has.
But Duckworth is a scientist. She's actually breaking down the mechanics of human achievement into, believe it or not, mathematical equations.
Right. This is not a motivational speech. This is a psychological autopsy of what makes high achievers tick. We're going to look at something called the naturalness bias, the 2 specific equations of success, the architecture of your goals.
And then how to build grit from the inside out and the outside in. So let's start with that idea, the talent delusion. Because if the whole candidate score failed, it's because it was measuring the wrong thing. It was measuring talent.
Yeah.
But we as a society just can't seem to let go of that idea.
We're addicted to it. And there's a term for this, the naturalness bias. It runs so much deeper than we think.
How so?
There was this incredible study done by a researcher named Chia Young-se. She focused on professional musicians. I mean, these are people who know the industry inside and out. They are the experts.
And you'd assume these are people who would say they value hard work, right?
Right.
Of course they do.
Oh, 100%. If you gave them a questionnaire, they overwhelmingly stated that effort, practice, perseverance, that these things were way more important than just innate talent. They claimed to value the striver.
But talk is cheap.
Exactly. So Tsay ran an experiment. She brought these experts in and had them listen to 2 audio clips of a piano performance. For one clip, she told them the performer was a natural, someone with innate God-given ability.
Okay.
For the other clip, she told them the performer was a striver, someone who had to work incredibly, incredibly hard to reach that same level of skill.
And the catch is, it was the same audio clip.
It was the exact same musician playing the exact same piece of music. The data going into their ears was identical, but consistently, across the board, the experts rated the performance by the natural as superior.
You're kidding me.
Nope. They said the natural had more potential, was more hireable, produced better art. They essentially hallucinated a difference in quality simply because of the label talent.
That's profound. It means our bias for what we think is magic is so strong, it literally overrides our own senses. We hear what we want to hear.
We do.
So the question is why? Why do we do that? Why are we so threatened by the person who has to work hard for it?
It's funny. The philosopher Nietzsche actually figured this out way back in the 19th century. He wrote about what he called the genius.
The cult of the genius.
Yeah. And his argument was that we mystify success because it's a self-defense mechanism.
Meaning, if I see you do something incredible and I call you a genius, I'm basically letting myself off the hook.
Precisely. If I say, wow, you're a genius, it implies you're a different species of human. You were born with something I wasn't, so I don't have to compare myself to you. I don't have to feel bad about my own lack of accomplishment.
But if I acknowledge that your success came from, say, 20,000 hours of agonizing, boring, deliberate practice.
Well, now you've got a problem, because now the ball is in your court. The reason you're not an Olympian isn't your DNA. It's because you chose to watch Netflix instead of train for 6 hours a day. It exposes our own lack of effort. So we prefer the talent myth. It protects the ego.
Wow, that hits hard. By focusing on talent, we mythologize success so we don't have to emulate it. But Duckworth just strips all that mythology away. She offers a very dry but very compelling set of equations to explain how achievement actually happens.
And this is the mental model that you really need to picture 2 simple equations. The first one is talent multiplied by effort equals skill.
Okay, let's stop there for a second. How is she defining talent? Because we just said talent isn't the most important thing, but it's right there in her formula.
This is a really she defines talent very, very straight as the rate of, that's it.
The rate of learning.
Yeah. So when you put in 1 hour of work, how much better do you? Some people, the naturals, they might improve by, say, 10 units in that hour. Someone else might only improve by 5 units. That speed of improvement, that's talent.
Okay, so talent is real. We're not denying biology here. It exists. But on its own, talent is just potential. It's a rate of speed, not a distance traveled.
Exactly. You have the rate, which is talent, but you have to multiply it by the time you spend on the task, effort, to get an actual result, which is skill.
Right?
If your effort is 0, it doesn't matter if your talent is 100. 100 times 0 is still 0. You have no skill.
Right. So that's equation 1. You apply effort to your talent and you develop a skill. But having the skill doesn't automatically mean you've achieved anything, does it? You can be a great writer who never actually writes a book.
Which brings us to the second one, and it is skill multiplied by effort equals achievement.
Effort. It's in there twice.
That's it. That is the aha moment of the entire theory. Effort counts twice.
Let's break that down. Why does it count twice? That seems counterintuitive at first.
Because it works on 2 different levels. First, you need effort to build the asset in the first place. That's building your skill. Then you need a whole separate application of effort to make that asset productive, to actually use the skill to create something.
Okay, give me an example.
The pottery parable. It's a classic story from art education. A ceramics teacher divides a class into 2 groups. One group is told they'll be graded on quantity, make 50 pounds of pots by the end of the semester, and you get an A.
Okay.
The other group is graded on quality. They only have to make 1 pot, but it has to be...
And logically, you'd think the quality group, the ones who spend all their time planning and theorizing about the perfect pot, would make the best one.
You would think that, but they never do. The best, most beautiful pots always come from the quantity group, because the quantity group was in the mud. They were just making pot after pot after pot. Their first 10 were probably garbage. But the sheer effort of repetition built their skill. That's equation 1.
Talent times effort equals skill. They were getting better with every pot.
Right. Then, the continued effort of making even more pots allowed them to apply that newfound skill to eventually create a masterpiece. That's equation 2. Skill times effort equals achievement.
Meanwhile, the quality group just sat there, paralyzed by the idea of perfection. They didn't put in the effort to build the skill, so they had no skill to apply.
Exactly. Duckworth uses a treadmill analogy. Imagine you have a natural who picks things up instantly. They have high talent, they get on the treadmill and they get fit in like 2 days.
Sure.
But if they get bored and jump off the treadmill after just 1 week, their total distance traveled, their achievement is...
Whereas the person with maybe half the talent who learns slower, if they stay on that treadmill for an entire year, they're going to end up running a marathon.
Their total distance will be exponentially greater. Will Smith has a funnest quote about this. He says something like, "I've never viewed myself as particularly talented. Where I excel is ridiculous, sickening work ethic.
While the other guy is sleeping, I'm working."
While the other guy is eating, I'm working. He's instinctively banking on that multiplier effect. He knows that effort appears twice in the formula, so he can literally outmath the people who are more naturally talented.
Okay, so this all makes sense, but it brings up a really uncomfortable. If effort is so important, why do we all know people who work incredibly hard but seem to get nowhere? They're constantly grinding, but they're just spinning their wheels.
Right, and this is where we have to make the distinction between just hard work and actual grit.
Intensity versus consistency.
That's the core of it. Grit isn't just about intensity. It's not about pulling an all-nighter to cram for an exam. It's not a 3-week crash diet. That's just a temporary spike in effort. Grit is stamina. It's consistency over a very, very long timeline.
There's that story in the book about the Wharton entrepreneur. He comes to Duckworth all proud, bragging about how much he's working, how little he's sleeping.
Right, how much venture capital he's raised. He fully expects her to be impressed with his hustle.
And what does she say?
She basically just shrugs. She says, "That's great. Come back and talk to me in 2 years. If you are still working on the same project with the same level of intensity, then I'll say you have grit."
Because true grit is about holding the same top-level goal, not for a week or a month, but for years, for decades.
Which brings us to the next big idea, the architecture of grit. To be consistent for that long, you can't just be trying hard at everything all the time. You need a structure. You need a hierarchy for your goals.
Okay, so let's visualize this. She says, to imagine a pyramid.
Pyramid of goals. At the very bottom of this pyramid, you have your low level. These are your daily to-do lists.
Yeah.
Answer emails, go to the gym, call that supplier. They're the tasks.
Above that, you have mid-level goals.
These are your strategy, your projects. Launch a new product line. Get that promotion at work. Run a marathon this year. They are the concrete objectives that serve something bigger.
And at the very, very top of the pyramid.
That's your top level goal. This is your ultimate compass. It's your why. For Angela Duckworth herself, her top level goal is something like use psychological science to help children thrive. It's the unifying philosophy of her entire life's work.
And I think the most important part of this model is the distinction she makes between what's written in ink and what's written in pencil. I think a lot of people get grit wrong here. They think it means you should never quit anything, ever.
That's such a dangerous misconception.
Yep.
And it's just not true. Gritty people quit things all the time.
But what do they quit?
They quit the low-level goals. They quit the tactics. A particular strategy isn't working. If a mid-level goal turns out to be a dead end, they have no problem crossing it out. They erase the pencil.
The top level goal, the one, the peak of the pyramid.
That is written in permanent ink. You never, ever erase the ink. You can change the path, but you do not change the destination.
The story of Bob Mankoff, the cartoon editor for The New Yorker, is a perfect illustration of this in action.
Oh, it's perfect. He has what many would consider the most prestigious job in the world of cartooning.
But before he was the editor, he was just a guy desperately trying to get a single cartoon published in the magazine.
And he submitted over 2,000 cartoons to The New Yorker. 2,000.
And for context, getting rejected from The New Yorker isn't like getting a polite no thank you letter. It's just silence. It's a void.
Total silence. Now, a person with what you might call stupid grit, someone who is just stubborn, they might have just kept drawing the same style of cartoons and submitting them 2,000 times, hoping for a different result.
The definition of insanity.
Exactly. Mankoff didn't do that. His top-level goal was clear. Become a New Yorker cartoonist, That was an ink. But he realized that his strategy, his mid-level goal of submit cartoons in my current style, was failing miserably.
So what did he change?
He changed his tactics. He went to the public library. He pulled every single issue of The New Yorker going back decades. He sat there and he dissected the humor. He analyzed the line weights of the drawings. He realized his dot shading style was just wrong for their specific aesthetic, so he erased his style goal and wrote a new one. He adapted his approach.
He quit the strategy in order to save the mission.
Perfectly put. And eventually, of course, he got a cartoon accepted, then he got another, then he got hired, and then he became the editor in charge of the whole thing. That is what intelligent grit looks like. It's a stubbornness about the ultimate destination, but extreme flexibility about the route.
So we've got the equations, we got the gold pyramid, but let's make this personal. What if I'm listening to this right now and I'm thinking, you know what, I don't have that. I get bored easily. I switch my top level goals every 6 months. Is grit something you're born with? Is it genetic or is it something you can change?
The best news from all of this research is that grit is highly plastic. It can grow. We know this because, on average, grit scores go up as we age. A 60-year-old is generally grittier than a 20-year-old.
Which suggests it's learned, not innate.
It's learned. And Duckworth's research identifies 4 specific psychological assets that allow grit to develop from the inside out. They tend to develop in a specific order: interest, practice, purpose, and hope.
Okay, so let's walk through that life cycle. Asset number 1, interest.
This is where we have to debunk another one of those movie myths, the lightning bolt moment of passion. We tell kids to follow your passion as if passion is this fully formed object they're just supposed to stumble upon one day.
The moment I touched a piano, I just knew.
Right. And it almost never happens like that. The research shows that in the real world, the beginning of an interest is usually messy. It's vague. It's just a little spark of curiosity. That's kind of neat. Or, I wonder how that works. The mistake people make is they expect to feel an immediate, overwhelming obsession.
And when they don't feel that obsession, or when it gets a little bit boring,
they quit. They think, oh, well, this must not be my true calling because it's not easy and exciting every single second. But gritty people understand that interests have to be triggered first, and then they have to be actively deepened over time. You have to play around in the sandbox for a long time before it solidifies into a real passion.
So step 1 is just allow yourself to be curious and don't bail just because the fireworks aren't going off on day 1.
Precisely. Let it simmer. But just being interested isn't enough. Eventually, you have to move to the second asset, which is pace practice. And this is key, not just any practice. We have to be really clear about the difference between flow and deliberate practice.
Everybody loves flow. Flow is that amazing feeling when you're in the zone, time disappears, everything is clicking, and you feel like a god.
Flow is the reward. Flow is what happens during the performance after you've already mastered skill. But deliberate practice is the exact opposite of flow. It feels awful, painful, it's high effort, and it involves specifically focusing on the things you cannot do.
So this is the difference between, say, going for a pleasant jog in the park versus training for the Olympics.
A perfect analogy. If you go for the same 3-mile jog every morning for 20 years, listening to a podcast, zoning out, you are not going to get any faster. You're just maintaining. That's what Duckworth would call mindless practice.
Deliberate practice, on the other hand, requires setting specific targets for improvement and getting immediate, often brutal feedback.
Duckworth looked at the kids who win the National Spelling Bee, and she found that the kids who just love to read books for fun, which is an enjoyable flow state activity, they don't win. The kids who win are the ones who spend hours alone in their room with flashcards, memorizing obscure Greek and Latin roots, getting quizzed by their parents, failing, and doing it all over again the next day.
That sounds absolutely miserable.
It is miserable. That is the entire point. If the practice feels easy and fun, you're probably not improving. You have to embrace the discomfort of your own incompetence. That's the only way that skill is actually built.
Okay, so you find an interest, you subject yourself to painful, deliberate practice. But to keep going for years, that can't be enough. You need something more. Which brings us to asset number 3, purpose.
This is the critical shift from a me-oriented motivation to an other-oriented motivation. At the highest levels of performance, just doing it for the money or the fame or personal glory, it eventually stops being enough to get you out of bed in the morning. You need to feel that your work matters to other people, to the world.
This is the famous bricklayer parable.
The 3 bricklayers on a construction site. A traveler comes by and asks the first one, "What are you doing?" And he grumbles and says, "I'm laying bricks." He has a job.
Right.
He asks the second bricklayer the same question. The man says, "I'm building a wall." He sees the bigger project. He has a career.
And the third.
He asks the third bricklayer, and the man looks up with a gleam in his eye and says, I am building the house of God. He has a calling. His work is connected to a transcendent purpose.
Now, the trap here, I think, is for a young person to feel like they need to be that third bricklayer on day one, that they need to find their ultimate calling at age 22.
Which is completely paralyzing. What Duckworth's research found fascinatingly is that a sense of purpose often develops. You start with a vague interest, you get good at it through thousands of hours of deliberate practice, and then once you've achieved mastery, you have this revelation, wow, I can use this hard-won skill to actually help people. Purpose is often a discovery that comes from mastery. You don't need to know how you're going to save the world when you're just starting out. Just focus on laying the bricks well. The purpose will reveal itself later.
Okay, and finally, the fourth asset, the one that keeps the whole engine running, especially when you fail: hope.
We have to be so careful with this word. This is not passive hope, like, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow. This is what she calls active hope. It's the deeply held belief that you have some measure of control over your own.
This connects directly to the foundational work of Martin Seligman on learned helplessness, doesn't it?
It does. This is some of the most important psychological research of the 20th century. Seligman conducted these experiments where he put dogs in a cage floor that could administer a very mild electric shock.
It sounds cruel, but the insight is absolutely vital for understanding human motivation.
It is. In one group, the dogs could push a little panel with their nose to stop the shock. They had agents. They had control. In the other group, the dogs had no control. The shock would just stop at random times. They quickly learned that nothing they did mattered.
And then came the second part of the experiment.
Then he put both groups of dogs into a new cage, a shuttle box, where all they had to do to escape the shock was jump over a very low wall. The dogs that had agency in the first experiment jumped immediately. They had active hope. They believed their actions mattered.
And the other dogs.
The dogs that had learned helplessness, the ones who came to believe that their actions had no effect, they just laid down and whined. They didn't even try to escape, even though freedom was just a tiny hop away.
Terrifying metaphor. It shows that if you believe you have no control, you won't even attempt to solve a solvable problem. You'll just accept the pain.
This is why Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset is so critical to the idea of grit. If you have a fixed mindset, I failed the test because I'm just not good at math, you are the dog laying down on the floor. You believe the shock is a permanent feature of your identity.
But if you have a growth mindset,
If you have a growth mindset, your explanation, I failed the test because I didn't study the right material yet. You believe you can jump over the wall. The failure is temporary and specific, not permanent and pervasive.
the old Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, rise 8.
Exactly. Hope, in the context of grit, is the story you tell yourself when you fail. Do you tell a story of permanence and helplessness, or a story of temporary setbacks and personal agency? That internal dialogue is what determines whether you get back up for.
So that's the internal engine: interest, practice, purpose, and hope. But we're not just engines. We're social creatures. We don't grow in a vacuum. We're shaped by our parents, our coaches, our friends, our culture. So let's shift to growing grit from the outside in.
This is where we get into parenting. And I know this can be a really sensitive topic. Every parent wants to know, how do I raise a kid who doesn't quit at the first sign of trouble?
And there's this false choice we're often presented with. You either have to be a tyrant, a demanding tiger mom, or you have to be this permissive parent who just showers them with praise and gives out participation trophies for everything.
The research shows it's not an either situation, it's a grid. Imagine a graph with 2 axes. The vertical y-axis is demands, how high are your standards. The horizontal x-axis is support, how much warmth, encouragement, and help do you provide.
Okay, let's map out the 4 quadrants.
High demands, but low support. That's the authoritarian parent. The my way or the highway because I said so parent. That can create compliance, but often resentment and a lack of internal motivation.
Then you have low demands but high support.
That's the permissive parent. Oh, you're perfect just the way you are, sweetie. Don't worry about it. Lots of warmth, but no challenge.
And low demands, low support is just neglectful.
Right. But the winning quadrant, the one that cultivates grit, is high demands and high support. This is what's called wise parent or authoritative.
So what does that look like in practice?
The parent who says, I am expecting you to get an A in this very difficult class because I know you are capable of it. And I'm going to sit down with you at the kitchen table every single night and help you with your homework. And
The story of NFL Hall of Famer Steve Young and his father is the perfect illustration of this.
it really is. His dad was actually nicknamed Grit Young. That was his real nickname. And he was tough. He was high demand. He made the kids do sit-ups and push-ups every day.
But then there's that story from when Steve was in 2nd grade.
Steve had terrible separation anxiety. He would refuse to go to school. He would literally cling to the door frame crying. Now, an authoritarian dad might have just ripped him off the door and shoved him in the car. A permissive dad might have just let him stay home.
What did Grit Young do?
He was firm. The demand was clear. You have to go to school. But he was also incredibly supportive. He and Steve's mom talked to him, reassured him, and get this. His mom actually went to the school and sat in the back of his second grade classroom for weeks.
For weeks.
Weeks, until Steve felt safe enough to be there on his own. That is the definition of high support. And later in life, when Steve was a star quarterback, his dad would drive through blinding fog, take 3 different flights, sleep on an airport floor just to be in the stands for his son's games.
The message was always the same. The standard is incredibly high, but you are not alone in reaching for it.
I am in your corner, 100%. That combination of challenge and safety is what allows a child to take on hard things without fear of catastrophic failure.
Speaking of hard things, Duckworth has a very specific, actionable tool for this. It's called the hard thing rule. This is pure gold for any parent listening right now.
It's the rule she uses in her own house with her own daughters. It has 3 simple parts. Part 1, everyone in the family, and this includes the parents, has to be doing a hard thing.
And a hard thing isn't just like doing your chores.
No, it has to be something that requires deliberate practice, something you are actively trying to get better at. It could be piano, ballet, soccer, learning to code. It requires a teacher or a coach, and it requires getting feedback on your performance.
Okay, so that's part 1. What's part 2?
Part 2 is you are allowed to quit, but, and this is the absolute crucial nuance, you cannot quit on a bad day.
I love this. You can't quit because you're frustrated, or because the teacher yelled at you, or because you missed the winning goal, or just because you're tired that afternoon.
You can only quit at a natural stopping point, when the season is over, when the tuition payment for the lessons runs out, when the semester ends. This teaches a child that feelings of frustration and failure are temporary. It forces them to push through the dip. And what they often find is that once they get through the hard part, they don't want to quit anymore.
And part 3.
You get to pick your own hard thing.
Autonomy. It comes back to that first asset, interest.
Exactly. You can't force a kid to be gritty about playing the violin if they have absolutely no interest in music. They have to have a say in the matter. So the rule is you have to do a hard thing and you have to finish what you start, but you get to choose the path.
That's the family unit. But what about the wider world? Duckworth has this great line: if you want to be gritty, join a gritty culture.
This is the ultimate life hack for building grit. Willpower is a finite resource. If you have to wake up every single morning and use all your mental energy to force yourself to work hard while everyone around you is taking it easy, you will eventually burn out.
But we're natural conformists. We mimic our tribe. So if you join a tribe where high effort and resilience are just the normal thing to do, you'll just adapt to that standard.
Look at the culture Pete Carroll built with the Seattle Seahawks football team. Carroll is obsessed with grit. He actually collaborated with Duckworth on her research. He built his entire team philosophy around the idea of always compete.
And it wasn't just a slogan they put on a poster in the locker room.
No, he engineered the entire environment to support it. He blasted loud music at practice to create a chaotic, high-energy atmosphere. He turned every single drill, even warm-ups, into a competition. They had something called Tell the Truth Mondays, where they would brutally review the game tape and hold everyone accountable. He created an environment where giving 100% effort wasn't exceptional. It was the baseline cost of admission to be part of the group. If you didn't hustle, you simply didn't fit in.
You essentially outsource your discipline to the social environment. You don't have to decide to work hard every day. The culture decides for you.
Precisely. And the ultimate example of this is when an entire nation adopts a culture of grit, like Finland.
The concept of sisu.
Sisu. It's a Finnish word that doesn't have a direct English translation. It's a unique blend of grit, guts, resilience, stoicism, and stubbornness. And it's forged from their national history.
Specifically, the Winter War in 1939.
The Soviet Union invaded Finland. On paper, it was a total mismatch. The Soviets had 3 times as many soldiers, 30 times as many aircraft, and over 100 times as many tanks. Everyone on the world stage expected Finland to collapse in a week.
But they didn't.
They held out for months. They fought in negative 40-degree weather. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they used clever tactics and inflicted massive casualties on the Red Army. And the psychological fuel for this incredible resistance was sisu.
But it wasn't just that they were individually brave. It was a matter of national identity, wasn't it?
That's the crucial part. A Finnish soldier in that war didn't sit down and calculate the odds. He didn't do a cost-benefit analysis and conclude that surrender was the logical option. His thought process was, I am a Finn, and Finns have sisu, therefore quitting is not an option.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If your identity is intertwined with the idea of never giving up, then you won't give up.
And that is the most powerful form of grit you can have, when it stops being a choice you have to make and it just becomes an expression of who you are.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground here. The talent delusion, the equations of achievement, the goal pyramid, the 4 internal assets, the role of parents in culture. I want to bring this all the way back around to where we started, to Angela Duckworth herself.
Right.
Because there's this beautiful, almost literary irony in her own life story.
There really is. We mentioned her father earlier. He was a brilliant man, but he was fixated on this idea of genius. And he would constantly tell Angela and her siblings, you're no genius.
He was looking for that effortless Einstein-level brilliance, and he just didn't see it in his own daughter, which must have been incredibly painful to hear.
Devastating. But she kept working. She found her interest in psychology. She did the grueling, deliberate practice of scientific research. She found her purpose in helping children thrive. And then, in 2013, she gets a phone call
From the MacArthur Foundation.
informing her that she has been awarded a MacArthur Fellowship, which is known around the world by its informal name, the Genius Grant.
You could not write a better ending to that story. The father who tells her she's no genius, and she grows up to win the Genius Grant.
But here's the twist, and this is what makes her work so meaningful. She didn't win the grant by proving her dad wrong about her innate intellect. She didn't suddenly reveal that she had a 200 IQ all along.
She won the Genius Grant by proving that his entire premise was wrong.
She won it by proving that genius, in the way that he and our culture define it, is not the most important prerequisite for making a great contribution to the world. She proved that grit matters more. In a way, she proved him right. She wasn't a genius. But in doing so, she proved him wrong about what really matters. She beat the naturals by simply staying on the treadmill longer.
And that really leads to the final thought I want to leave with everyone listening. It's an idea from a sociologist named Dan Chambliss, who studied Olympic swimmers for years. He called it the mundanity of excellence.
Chambliss spent thousands of hours on pool decks watching the best athletes in the world. And his conclusion was shocking to me. He said, excellence is mundane. When you look really closely at an Olympic champion, you don't see a magical, superhuman act. You see 1,000 tiny, boring things done correctly over and over and over again.
You see the precise angle of their hand entry. You see their sleep schedule. You see their diet. You see the tedious stretching routines.
It's the relentless accumulation of all those mundane acts that creates what looks like a magical outcome to the rest of us. We see the gold medal and we think, glory. The swimmer just feels the damp hair, the smell of chlorine, and the memory of their aching muscles at 5 a.m.
So here's the challenge for everyone listening. Stop looking for the lightning bolt of passion. Stop waiting to feel like a genius. Instead, look at your pyramid. What is that one sentence written in ink at the very top?
And the next time you feel like quitting, ask yourself a hard question. Are you erasing a strategy in pencil because it failed? Or are you about to erase the goal in ink because the work got hard?
Success is not reserved for the elite. It's not reserved for the cadets with the perfect whole candidate scores. It is available to anyone who is willing to respect the math. Talent times effort equals skill, and skill times effort equals achievement.
Get on the treadmill and just don't get off.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.